Okay. All right, Mom. We're gonna watch a video first. That's Mom talking. I have a fan. We're gonna watch a quick video and then we'll start the lesson. So, but let's go ahead and I'll turn my.
You can know the one true God. Sometimes it seems daunting trying to understand God and make sense of the Bible. Where do we even begin? The good news is that He has taken that first step for us. He came to us. The one true God makes Himself known, and He is speaking right now through His Word, the Bible, and you can know Him. This is why thinking deeply about God is good for our souls. And For the Church Institute exists to help you do that.
For the Church Institute is a tool created to help church leaders shepherd their people and equip them for ministry. It's intended to help church members think deeply about God. It's intended to help them know God better through His Word under the instruction of their pastors with an assist from our professors. And so one of the things we've done with For the Church Institute is created a tool to help pastors do that, a tool to help pastors equip and train the saints for the work of the ministry, to shepherd their flock. And so one of the things we're excited about with the For the Church Institute is extending our classrooms to your church, to allowing our faculty to speak into the work you're doing there at your local church.
There are a number of ways FTC Institute strengthens the work of the local church and aids them in producing more mature church members. First of all, it routinizes that training. It brings a clear schedule, a clear course of study, a clear course of action. In a very real sense for the pastor, it is plug and play. So logistically speaking, it shows up ready to be delivered. Practically speaking, biblically speaking as well, it is rich content. Biblical truth, theology, church history, being a Christian, and a host of other topics that we are rolling out that provide for church members rich biblical teaching that will shape their lives, will impact their minds and their hearts and their hands for Jesus Christ.
For the Church Institute they just launched 2 days ago. It is Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, and they're offering a few classes. Right now they only offer 2. Theology and church history. Both are part 1s. And what I'd like for us to do, and I noticed that we had a number of people that were interested in church history, that we would have that class here. Okay? You take it at your own pace. Right? So we as a group would just do this once a week. So you're talking 10 weeks, but it's going to be church history. And, there's some options for you. Like, if you finish the 10 weeks and do some of the discussion that they're wanting, you'll actually get a certificate of completion. Now, it's a little bit of a joke about the credit. Okay? If you finish the class, you get what's called Christian Continuing Education, which equals 1/10 of a college credit hour. So I don't know why they offer that, but all that to say is that for 10 weeks, we would be studying church history taught by a professor rather than some sort of wonderful speaker who doesn't really specialize in church history. Dr. John Mark Yates does specialize in church history. He's got a PhD in church history. Bless, I would prefer you to hear it rather than me. Church history is not exactly, it's a passion of mine. I love it, but I'm not exactly what you would say well-researched in. So, I was thinking about maybe Monday mornings, for those who are available, to just like we had our ladies, our group, our outreach group, or our group we were Monday morning. We were a combination. We would have church history class And it's 10 weeks. It's 10 weeks, but you're going to go through from church from the beginning through 1500 to the beginning of the Reformation. And so, you know, if you have an email address, you would be, quote, enrolled in it. You'd get emails and whatnot from them. But so we would watch a video, and we'd have a number of discussion questions that they'd have for us. And we have it's about a 20, 25-minute video. But the class, they say, is about an hour long. But it is Church History 1. So like I said, they just launched this 2 days ago. I knew a number of people were excited for church history, so I want to give this as an opportunity that you and I've never done this before, obviously, that you would be taught by a well thought out professor. You know, he's a seminary professor, but it's for the church. If the 6 seminaries that Southern Baptists have, I definitely align with Midwestern's vision for the church. The purpose of the seminary is to serve the church, help the church, local church. Other ones have about preaching or theology, but Midwestern's vision is for the church, which is why they're doing it. So that's I think so. I mean, they do want some feedback. They do want you to have reflection on it. Like I said, I've never done this before, so I cannot tell you, there's no book you have to read pages 1 through 80 by next week. None of that. At least I don't think so. They may have some questions for you, but I don't know. It's free. These 2 courses are free. In the future, they may add some that are paid. But anyways, any thoughts? I'm thinking I really want to wait till after baby comes. I'm thinking sometime mid-August. So 10 weeks, so you're talking 2.5 months, so, yeah. We try to pick like a Monday. Weekday morning. We'd meet in here. But, any other questions? Sure. Absolutely. All right. Any other questions on that? I know a number, like I said, a number of people were interested in church history. And with me, I could only give you a big ballpark thought or through it. Otherwise, I have to find some sort of DVD. But through this means you're going to get much better content than I ever could get. All right. Job 18. We are in Job chapter 18 today. Job 18 and 19. We're going to look at both Bildad and Job's reply. Now, Bildad, he is to the point. Bildad is going to pretty much repeat what we've already read. He's going to spend a lot of his time on what is the end result of the wicked? Suffering. Okay, that's the end. That's how Bildad's going to spend a lot of his lecture here, is just the end result of the wicked. So first we'll read verses 1 through 4. Ask a little question here, a little topic, and then we'll go into 5 to 21. And we'll talk about that section. Job 18, starting in verse 1. It says, Then Bildad the Shuhite replied, How long until you stop talking? Show some sense, and then we can talk. Why are we regarded as cattle, as stupid in your sight? You who tear yourself in anger, should the earth be abandoned on your account, or a rock be removed from its place? So, opening up, he goes towards Job. You're so hot right now, emotionally angry. There's angry and there's being hot. When someone is hot, if you've been hot, you are no longer able to have a rational conversation. You are not approachable. There's just no point in having that. And that's what Bildad is saying. He says there in verse 4, you who tear yourself in anger. Your own anger is going to be your demise. And so much of that is, We can all understand that. We all agree with that. Even in James, he says, be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. Why does James talk about slow to speak and slow to anger as though they're different, or as though there's no relationship? There is a relationship. Speaking when angered is a common issue, both in Proverbs and in James, and even what Bildad is trying to say. So he says that you are just speaking, you're hot, you're not even rational, and then we get into verse 5. Verse 5, he goes, yes, the light of the wicked is extinguished. The flame of his fire does not glow. The light in his tent grows dark, and the lamp beside him is put out. His powerful stride is shortened, and his own schemes trip him up. For his own feet lead him into a net, and he strays into its mesh. A trap catches him by the heel, a noose seizes him, a rope lies hidden for him on the ground, and a snare waits for him along the path. Terrors frighten him on every side and harass him at every step. His strength is depleted. Disaster lies ready for him to stumble. Parts of his skin are eaten away. Death's firstborn consumes his limbs. Verse 14. He is ripped from the security of his tent and marched away to the king of terrors. Nothing he owned remains in his tent. Burning sulfur is scattered over his home. His roots below dry up and his branches above wither away. All memory of him perishes from the earth. He has no name anywhere. He is driven from light to darkness and chased from the inhabitant world. He has no children or descendants among his people, no survivor where he used to live. Those in the west are appalled at his fate, while those in the east tremble in horror. Indeed, such is the dwelling of the unjust man, and this is the place of the one who does not know God. So, we've read this before numerous times, that the wicked will suffer and die. The wicked are brought judgment on earth. On earth. Have we not noticed in Job, we don't talk about life after death, right? Death is the great equalizer. In the book of Job, death is as the place of relief for Job, but we don't ever really talk about life beyond death in the book of Job. So when you read things about judgment, when you read these things about just suffering and hurting and all your prosperity is taken away, I mean, Bildad is saying that is happening on earth now. Now, we talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago about Psalm 73, how the psalmist says, Psalm of the Psalm says, I envied the wicked because they seem to just grow in prosperity and nothing happens. So here's another question, just to kind of counter Bildad. Where in the New Testament do you see, or as an example, of an unbelieving, wicked, rich man living till he died? Bible trivia. An unbelieving, rich man, wicked. Luke 16, right? The rich man and Lazarus. The rich man and Lazarus. He was rich all the way. And then it says that then he died, and then obviously everything was taken away. So even in the New Testament theology, in the New Testament, Jesus gives this picture that yes, you can be prosperous and yet be unbelieving your whole life. But then obviously when you die, then comes the judgment. And you're no longer prosperous, but you're suffering. So I say all these things just to kind of counter again Bildad. When we read the book of Job, we know it's Scripture, right? It's the Bible, so it always speaks truth. But when you're reading the book of Job, everything has to be in proper context, right? Proper context. Job is a righteous man. Bildad is misspeaking. He is wrong, and he errs. We can go through some more of this. You have in verse 7 of chapter 18. I didn't break this down verse by verse because in some ways we've already gone through this. In verse 7 of chapter 18, he says, his powerful stride is shortened and his own schemes trip him up, or his own words, his own schemes. Again, that's all throughout Proverbs. Anytime the wicked set a trap to get the righteous to hurt people for their own gain, in the book of Proverbs it says that he basically sets a trap for himself, right? And so that's a common theme. Again, though, Bildad just always keeps bringing out the issue that because you're suffering, you have sin. because it's guaranteed the wicked to suffer. Therefore, they use that formula. You have suffered, therefore you have sinned. I mean, there's so much more, and there's a lot of things in here. You have in verse 13, it says, parts of his skin are eaten away. Death's firstborn consumes his limbs. Verse 14, he is ripped from the security of his tent and marched away to the king of terrors. I mean, death is almost personified as a king. I mean, the death's firstborn, the king of terrors. I mean, Bildad is really painting this picture of the end of the wicked, and that is just immense suffering and pain. But that doesn't apply to Job. It's all wrong. So I'm not going to go through all the elaborations of Bildad here, but I want to get to Job's response today. Job's response, especially towards the latter part of the chapter, is considered the most, what people know most about Job, although I would say differ, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So Job chapter 19. Then Job answered, how long will you torment me and crush me with words? You have humiliated me now 10 times now, and you mistreat me without shame. Even if it is true that I have sinned, my mistake concerns only me. If you really want to appear superior to me and would use my disgrace as evidence against me, then understand that it is God who has wronged me and caught me in his net. I cry out violence, but get no response. I call for help, but there is no justice. He has blocked my way so that I cannot pass through. He has veiled my paths with darkness. He has stripped me of my honor and removed the crown from my head. He tears me down on every side so that I am ruined. He uproots my hope like a tree. His anger burns against me, and he regards me as one of his enemies. His troops advance together. They construct a ramp against me and camp around my tent. So, going back to chapter 19 here in the very beginning, again, you humiliate me. Humiliate me, you embarrass me. You're kicking a man when he's down. You are not helpful. Now, why? Now, this is interesting. Verse 4, he says, even if it is true that I have sinned, my mistake concerns only me. If you really want to appear superior to me and would use my disgrace against me as evidence against me, then understand that it is God who has wronged me and caught me in his net. So when he says that in verse 4, if it is true that I have sinned, then that's only between me and the Lord. What are you doing? You know, if this is a big issue, you should have no part of this. This is between me and the Lord here. But instead, if you think that I have sinned, now he kind of points the picture back to the Lord in verse 5. If you want to appear before superior to me, and when you use my disgrace as evidence against me, then understand that it is God who has wronged me and caught me in his net. If I have sinned, if I have done something wrong, it is not because that I did it, it is because of that God has done it to me. So again, Job's still claiming his innocence, but now, if there's something wrong that Job has done, who is he blaming? He blames God for it. He blames God. He blames God for whatever has befallen on him. And then in verse 7 through 12, and even on, he counts what the Lord has done. Verse 7, I cry out violence, but I don't get nothing. I call for help, but there is no justice. He has blocked my way so that I cannot pass through. He has veiled my paths with darkness. He has stripped me of my honor and removed the crown from my head. He tears me down on every side so that I am ruined. He uproots my hope like a tree. His anger burns against me, and he regards me as one of his enemies. His troops advance together. They construct a ramp against me. They camp around my tent. So in other words, like a besiege. So again, as I've asked this question every time, how does Job picture God in that stanza, in that paragraph, 7 to 12? Basically, an enemy. You have hidden my eyes that I cannot see my path. I cannot know what is right for me anymore. You have taken away. It says, you have stripped my honor. You removed the crown from my head. He tears me down so that I am ruined. I mean, he just lays out exactly what the Lord has done, which has caused him to sin, if that is the case. Well, let's keep going. He has more to say in verse 13. It says, he has removed my brothers from me. My acquaintances have abandoned me. My relatives stopped coming by, and my close friends have forgotten me. My house guests and female servants regard me as a stranger. I am a foreigner in their sight. I call for my servants, but he does not answer, even if I beg him with my own mouth. My breath is offensive to my wife, and my own family finds me repulsive. Even young boys scorn me. When I stand up, they mock me. All of my best friends despise me, and those I love have turned against me. So I'll pause right there. So now we go from what the Lord has done to him to the relationships around him. And how would you describe those? Describes the relationship between Job and all those around him. But you notice he didn't say sons and daughters, right? His sons and daughters. They're not there. Talks about his brothers, talks about his close friends, his servants, and then finally he even talks about his wife. I'd be afraid to ever make an accusation just because, again, that almost is like an invitation. I can dig it. And so, all of his relatives quit coming. Even his own servant, he calls for his servant. And even though he says he does not answer, even I beg him, verse 16, even I beg him with my own mouth. So even at this point, he is so repulsive by even his view, even his eyesight, by what other people perceive, that he was once the master and deserving of all honor, that he is called, he has to beg his servant to even lift a finger. Now, honestly, I've never fallen so far in humiliation and embarrassment that I am all alone. That I've never perceived, I've never gone through that. But let's be honest, most of the time, a lot of the time, not every time, a lot of the time when we get to that point, it is self-inflicted. It is self-inflicted. I mean, I've had numerous, in my homeless ministry experiences I've gone through, anytime someone has gone to the point where they just have to ask me for stuff, it is because they have burned a lot of bridges themselves. They have burned a lot of bridges. Most of the time, not every time. You feel abandoned, but it's different than Job. Because Job is 100% innocent. As opposed to someone saying, I have done things to myself. I am sorry. And begin to rebuild those bridges. Who, Job? Oh, of course. And that's the thing is, Job is proclaiming his innocence and no one believes him. That's probably the biggest part. He is proclaiming, even his three friends, it says here that his closest friends have abandoned him and quit talking to him. But Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar are actually talking to him. They came and they sat with him for 2 weeks. I mean, they're friends, they care. Even though these probably repulsive to look at. But even then, they still don't believe him. And that's what this whole book's about. Verse 19, all of my best friends despise me, and those I love have turned against me. Now, in just a moment of honesty, you think Job is embellishing, or is he probably speaking the truth? I'm sure he's speaking the truth. Huh? It is as he sees it. All right, now let's get on to 20. Verse 20. It says, my skin and my flesh cling to my bones. I have escaped with only the skin of my teeth. Have mercy on me, my friends, have mercy, for God's hand has struck me. Why do you persecute me as God does? Will you never get enough of my flesh? I wish that my words were written down, that they were recorded on a scroll, or were inscribed in stone forever by an iron stylus and lead. But I know that my Redeemer lives, and at the end he will stand on the dust. Even after my skin has been destroyed, yet I will see God in my flesh. I will see him myself. My eyes will look at him and not as a stranger. My heart longs within me. If you say, how will we pursue him since the root of the problem lies with him? Then be afraid of the sword, because wrath brings punishment by the sword, so that you may know there is a judgment. Okay, so you caught the word redeemer, right? All right, the word redeemer. That's what everyone. That's the big controversy in Job, is that idea of redeemer. So we'll start in verse 23. It says, "I wish that my words were written down, that they were recorded on a scroll, or were inscribed in stone forever by an iron stylus and lead." Now he wants. I would say what he's about to say is what he wants recorded forever. Verse 25. "But I know that my Redeemer lives, and at the end he will stand on the dust. Even after my skin has been destroyed, yet I will see God in my flesh. I will see him myself. My eyes will look at him, and not as a stranger. My heart longs within me." So the big question is he referring to the Messiah? It's a tough one. It's a tough one. Let's talk about redeemer. What does it mean, redeemer? Or to be redeemed in the verb form. What does it mean to redeem? To defend? Or to mediate, defend. Pay the price? So a cost? I know you guys don't. Does anyone ever get Apple gift cards? I don't know about Google Sound. Could you click on that word redeem, right? You click on that word redeem. Because there is a price, a cost, a purchase, a transfer of ownership when talking about redeem. To be redeemed, so a redeemer. But let's talk about for a moment in the New Testament. Redeemer, Jesus. What did he buy with his blood? He bought you. What did you do? You did nothing for him to buy you? You sinned, right? That's the cost. I mean, that's what he bought. You sinned, therefore you owed. You owe a penalty. And Jesus bought you. So you did wrong, and Jesus bought you. That's where this gets a little bit different in Job. What did Job do wrong? Nothing. So that's why the Redeemer, yes? Sure. He is. He would not deny that. In the book of Job, he is referred to as a man that fears God and turns away from evil. In Proverbs, that's a righteous man. In the book... Well, right. And I mean, we can take the Bible as a whole and apply that there is no such thing as a good person. But the message of Job is not he is a sinner being punished. The fact that he's a good man by the Bible's, by the book of Job standard, and he's not being punished. I mean, to be called a servant would be a high honor. But the issue is, because he's been claiming his innocence this whole time. I am innocent. I am innocent. Again, his picture of God is a bully, to make it G-rated there. As an enemy to be picked on. I'm an innocent man. I'm just a kid that you're hurting me for unknown reasons. Let me know what I've done. Let me know what I've done. And yet, so when he says my Redeemer, that's where it's a little bit different than what Jesus, the picture of the Redeemer of Jesus. Because he wants a mediator. We read that in Job 9. He wants someone to be his lawyer. But let's fast forward to the end of Job. Does someone come between Job and God? No. There is no mediator between Job and God. Yet in the end, Job gets rebuked, Job repents, and he's blessed. But at the end of the day, Job did not get redeemed by a Messiah. He got redeemed by God. God forgave him. God vindicated him. But when it comes to a Messiah picture, I have a harder time seeing that here in Job's particular context when he's asking for a Redeemer than it is in the New Testament easily when we are slaves to sin, due for wrath, and we were bought by Jesus. We needed to be bought. Whereas Job is asking for to be vindicated because he hasn't done anything in his mind. Now, the more he talks, the more he gets in trouble. That, if you let a man talk long enough, there's enough rope to hang himself. And that's kind of what happens with Job. Goodness, we're getting, 42 chapters of Job? And God doesn't talk till 38. So God is extremely patient. So that's the question. Even after my skin has been destroyed, is he talking about wanting the Redeemer, wanting to be redeemed on earth or after he's dead? That's a question. And by the way, this is a very controversial passage among other commentaries, regardless of which one you read. So, even though after my skin has been destroyed, does some of you guys have a little comment there? In verse, I have a little letter there that takes me to B. It says, literally skin which they destroyed, or skin they destroyed in this way. And then it says, yet I will see God in my flesh there in verse 26. So, as I said before, in Job, we don't get hardly at all a picture of life after death. That once you hit death, you're pain-free, he's relieved. And I want to kind of agree with Tremper Longman here, that when it talks about how his skin is completely destroyed, that is the pivotal, highest point of pain on earth that he's gone through. So when he hasn't yet hit the apex of suffering. But when he finally gets to that point, that it is just over in his life, that he'll see God. And in that moment, be redeemed. So in other words, when God has had enough of you, when you have gone through the suffering that God has planned for Job, that's when the redeemed moment happens. Now, that's obviously, there are other interpretations with that, whether that's Job after he's dead. But in the whole book of Job, we don't see much of Sheol at all, or life after death. In so many ways, he knows that it's God doing this to him, and it's going to take God to do it out. At times, and it is tough because here is a positive view, but for most of Job that we've read, Job is not having a positive view of God. Now, Job has a right understanding of the power of God. God's power is unmatched. There's nothing like it on earth. His power is right, but when it comes to doing good and evil, that's where Job is skewed. And so that's why it's hard, because this whole time God is picking on me. He won't leave me be. Let me die. Give me some relief. Let me have a little bit of comfort before I die. Job has done all these things about who God is and what he's done. He's pictured God as having archers that a shooting squad at him and all these things. But here, when God has finally been finished peeling my skin, that's when God's going to relent. And I'm right. I mean, I cannot relate to what some people go through this to have seen death as relief. I've never gone through that kind of suffering. And that's obviously what he's doing. That death is welcoming. I can only imagine what he would say. That's why his friends are saying it's your emotions that are making you say stupid things. That's what they're claiming. That was another comment I read today. That it's a someone that has it is someone that is almost like bailing you out. Um, well, and like I said, it is a debated issue on Redeemer. Just because there's a lot of pictures. And like I said, I read Boaz and Ruth today, but that was another illustration that I saw. The Prisoner is a new one. Didn't hear about that one. That's a new one. But I understand it, though, because he has asked for a mediator. He has asked for a defense attorney. And so it is a tough one. So I can't sit here and say I have just the utmost confidence in my thoughts on it. But any other thoughts on through 27? Again, compassion, right? Compassion on Job. We got to be careful about judging Job, what he's going through. Be very careful. Be very careful. 28, 29. He says, if you say, talking to his friend, if you say, how will we pursue him since the root of the problem lies with him, then be afraid of the sword, because wrath brings punishment by the sword, so that you may know there is a judgment. So now he's warning his friends. What's he warning them about exactly? I mean, he says, if you think the problem lies within me, and then he says, then be afraid of the sword. It's not like Job's going to pick up a sword. I mean, so many ways, if you're, in your opinion, if you think God's... So words and rebuking, right? So these guys' intentions are good. And the words that they say are wrong, granted they have right intentions. But yet, does God still rebuke them? Absolutely. Your words matter. Your words matter. Intentions is not good enough. Intentions matter, but so do just your actions itself. If you do bring harm, you need to apologize and ask for forgiveness. Because God still brings judgment. I mean, God shows mercy to them even though He still rebukes them. It's so hard to read the book of Job without knowing the ending. If you don't know the ending, it makes Job... It's almost like you just have to keep reading till you get there. Before you can really think about what they're saying, what's right and what's wrong. Because you can... it's easy to go along with his friends. You're suffering. Well, God's judging you for something. Charismatics do that all the time. Right.
He's the one who's actually doing it. Creativity. He said, yeah, go ahead. Do everything right. But Christ is there for
I mean, the book of Job, I mean, the heart longs within me. In the end, Job wants a conversation with God. Now, he doesn't know exactly what he's going to get in the end, but at the same time, I mean, it is God that while God allowed these things to happen, it's going to be God that's going to bring relief. And I think that's important to No, you're right. He is asking the wrong question, I guess, in some ways.
spend his whole life after no hope, none. What did he? Apparently nothing. Scary day for him. Apparently he was God's man.
Right, and for Job to have everything and then to lose everything, that'd probably be the different context.
You don't know what it's like before.
Right.
But still, this guy had nothing. There wasn't anybody there to help him. Not even the rich man.
No. You can only agree to it. Yeah, and Job is, in so many ways, I'm sure his friends wouldn't. Don't. No one has ever gone through the things that Job has gone through. And they always look at the degree of suffering as the degree of the sin, and that's But as that Job is just warning his friends. It's hard to call them friends anymore, especially when earlier on he talks about this is what happened to your son that rebelled. You don't want your friends to talk about why your child died. But yeah, I mean, yeah, how you judge may be done to you. Same way. Common responsible counselors. That's a little bit different nuance, but I mean, same thing over. I mean, every time you see a chapter begin, they always complain about what you ought to be, what kind of counselor you ought to be. But while this may not have a grand main idea that I see here from 19 and 20, I disagree with Bildad we disagree with you can live a wicked life and still be prosperous on earth, but there is a coming judgment where everything is equalized. And that's one thing that's just not really brought out in Job, but that's not really the point of Job, is not the afterlife. It's righteous people, servants of God, suffering. Why? Even then that may or may not be the main question. But let's do some prayer requests. Michelle called Donna today, and what was the update on it? But she's eager to get moving. Yeah, she wants to get moving. So. Okay. Any other prayer requests? Okay. Blackburn? Any other prayer requests? All right. We'll continue to lift up this church. Continue to ask that the Spirit of God change this church to that Christ is the King of this church. He is why we gather. He is why we hear. He is who we pray to. He is why we encourage each other for. So keep lifting up this church to the Lord to change hearts. Ministry is divine work. So, all right. Well, I'll pray. Would anyone like to close this in prayer? All right. I'll pray. Lord Heavenly Father, thank you so much again for your words today. And Lord, while again we are afraid to sit in judgment of Job, for we have not gone through that. And Lord, we just want to have compassion and almost be silent before Him. But Lord, again, with Job, we know that you are the decision maker of all things, Lord, that you decide all things, Lord, that you allow your servants to get hurt, you allow your children to get hurt, Lord, but we know that you allowed your Son to die so that we all have hope in life eternal through your Son. So, Lord, may that just encourage our hearts. May we believe in the gospel. Lord, may everyone just believe in the truth and these promises that you have given us, Lord, that there is no hope but you. And Lord, I want to pray for Donna as she is having to wait, or that she has been diagnosed with cancer, and the doctors are just having her wait. And Lord, I pray that first that you heal her body, or that she can serve you continuously, even while sick. And Lord, we do pray for complete healing. But above all, Lord, may you give her peace of mind, knowing that, again, there is nothing outside your control. Nothing outside your control, Lord, that you allow things to happen, both good and bad. But Lord, there is a promised hope. And so, Lord, again, we are thankful for you. We love you. Lord, I pray for McGuire. Lord, that we seek your face. Lord, that we pursue you. Lord, that we're passionate for you. Lord, that we are obsessed with you. And Lord, that you are the delight of our heart day in, day out. Lord, forgive us for our immaturity so often. Lord, we love you. Help us to love you and to serve and to help one another. Thank you so much. I pray this thing in your Son's name. Amen. So again, be thinking about church history. I had a number of people that was interested in church history. It's meant to inspire. I mean, that's what history does, right? History, it's meant to inspire, to encourage. I like what John Stott said, to disrespect church history is to disrespect the Holy Spirit. The Spirit of God has worked through the lives of men and women all through history, and I think we should listen. We should hear them, to hear their stories and so forth. So